Welcome to the Let It Bleed podcast, a place where you can hear the liquor-fueled ramblings of two narcissistic wizards who conjure the essence of inspirational people every week and bring it straight to you.
And just how do you plan on doing that? Magic. Motherfucker.
And now for the wizards themselves, David Amaya and Phil Arroyo.
Good enough.
No, not really perfect, but you know how it is. It's fine.
No,
it's fine.
Nothing's perfect.
Nothing's perfect. We're all just getting by. And
Except
the most
for-
we can hope for.
Yeah, that's true. Except for Watchmen, which is a pretty damn good show so far. I'm gonna say that it's
I was just watching that shit.
exceeding my expectations so far. Each one
Me
gets a little
too.
bit better, and it's getting. How far are you?
I'm really on episode 3. I was just like watching episode 4, but then, it was a whole a dog and pony show over here. Things got a little bit wild. Wasn't really paying attention, so I saw like little bits of it. I'll have to go back and rewatch it. But the first 3 episodes have been pretty fucking good so far.
Now I don't know. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, I don't remember if we had spoke about it before, but did you?
We did briefly.
Briefly, but did you say that you did understand or follow like the story from like the comic book, or I mean is it a comic book or is it a book?
It's a comic book,
it's
and then it was a movie. No, I never read the
Okay.
comic books, but I did see the movie.
Okay.
And
All right,
I thought I liked the movie, but God, it was like a long time ago. I really don't remember too well.
That's what Dave and I were saying, is that that movie had come out just a little bit later, because it kind of came out right, I think, even before or right around the time that Iron Man had just come out and kind of started the whole like craze with superhero
I think it was before.
films. Yeah, and so we were saying that it was ahead of its time, because if you were to watch that now, which I did a couple weeks ago, it's like, it's really interesting. For the time frame that we're in right now, it's kind of like this would definitely do well if it was released today, as opposed to when it was probably released.
Wasn't it supposed to be like an analogy for like Nixon and shit? Wasn't that a thing, or was it Reagan
Well,
in the
it's
80s? Fuck, I don't.
No, so basically, as the story goes, and this isn't really, giving anything away crucial to the plot line necessarily. It's just kind of part of the setting, is that it's like an alternate timeline reality, compared to ours. So like Nixon, instead of getting, instead of him resigning, he ends up serving 4 terms, and like, so basically he's kind of like what a Trump would be like in today's time, just kind of like just does whatever the fuck he wants and gets away with it, like kind of forced 4 terms on there. Yeah. And then so the timeline that we're in the show now it's much later. It's kind of like, things have kind of gone full circle. Yeah. And so and it is like, 2019, but there's just a lot of differences. Like in like the Vietnam War, I guess we won the Vietnam War in this story, and there's like a whole bunch of different stuff that's going on. Not to mention,
Well, I mean, they say we won the Vietnam War in this timeline too, but that's not exactly the truth.
the consensus I've always heard is that we lost in terms of like, that just some people are stubborn to say it for what it was, instead they say we would. But so in this reality, they actually like, it's like we went in there and just like fucked shit up and completely like won, and so it changes just a lot of things. And Robert Redford is the president in the new Watchmen series, which they said that like you didn't really need to watch the movie or read the book to really pick up on this, but I just find that that kind of hard to believe, because if I didn't go back and watch the movie and have Dave kind of fill me in on certain characters and just kind of give me a little bit of a backstory, I'd be completely lost. I'd be like, what the fuck is going on? Like, there's just so much and it does kind of unravel. It starts to come out and you start to pick things up after the first episode. But I would have just, without all that, it kind of would just still be like, what the hell am I watching? I don't really get it.
I think I expressed a couple of weeks ago that I thought the first episode was like very good. It was juicy. It was interesting, but like, I was afraid that it might just introduce these themes in a way and then never kind of tie them up. It would go full
the
Game
director
of Thrones us. Yeah.
Yeah. like the director did with The Leftovers.
See, I never
Now
watched that.
Now I do remember. I was talking about this, I believe. So, yeah, I mean, he did Lost and he did Leftovers.
But now after seeing a few episodes, I'm like, okay, I'm in. This shit has been good so far. It's delivered. It's not just teasing things that it never plans to follow through. I'm like, okay, this is actually interesting. It's got a message. It feels well thought out. So no, I'm really excited. Like, I got into it over the weekend. Actually, I ended up catching kind of the third episode on accident, and I was like, oh shit, this is really good. And I went back and watched all of them together.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, I had a vape hit and kind of just dried up the throat instantly. Anyway.
Oh man, don't you love when you take that big fat vape hit and you're just like, oh man, I am a champion at this, and then there's like just delayed views, like 5, 4, 3. Oh god. Anyways,
just cotton throat Joe. Yeah, no, it's anyways, I'm fine. I'll live. But yeah, I thought it was really cool that Trent Reznor did the score for that.
I saw that in the I just caught it in the credits like earlier tonight. I'm like, oh wait, music by Trent. That's fucking dope.
Yeah,
I like that. I could feel it too. I think
it's really good thematic tunes, so that, like, you know, builds the suspense, but it's like kind of unique, not stuff that you hear in every other show. And that's pretty badass. I love that you got like people like Trent Reznor and the RZA that like get these super sick gigs to, like, you know, do the sound for like, you know, do the scores for movies and series and stuff like that. Like, it's always a treat when you get to hear what they like bring to it. You know, like when the RZA did with Kill Bill, and what other shows or movies did he do the score for? I know Trent Reznor did the score for like The Social Network, and I'm sure that they've, you know, probably worked on numerous other things that I'm not even aware about. But yeah, it's always really cool when you
see them kind of branch out like that, not be so much themselves, like put their hands onto a project where their name and face isn't like the draw, you know. Where it's like, oh, they can just dive into the studio and kind of just use their raw technical ability, because they're still really good at that shit, to add something to it. And then when you find out later, like a pleasant surprise, it's like, oh, that's cool, you know?
Right, yeah. And, you know, these are artists also that are legends that we've loved for their own music, but then, like, seeing how, it's almost like a composer that you're admiring, like, you know, one of the great, you could tell like they're one of the greats because they're branching out and creating this thing that's for something else that's not entirely theirs. It's like a collaboration. You know, they're not like, I don't know. I just think it's badass.
No, I love it, man. I love that we are back. We are full swing into like fall television, and there's so much good shit out there to watch. You know?
Yeah.
And
totally.
I mean, fucking HBO.
I've run through it all though.
Fucking.
What are you watching on HBO?
Well,
other than the Watchmen,
I think is really killing their last season. I think it's great so far.
In this first episode, do you see it? Or the first couple episodes?
Yeah, the first 3 or however many it's been.
It's two right now for the new season. Yeah.
I thought it was 3. Okay, well, I'm tripping. Oh, maybe it is 2. Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Well, I think they're off to a strong start, you know. I'm never really sure. 6 seasons is like usually the max for a show, and I think that kind of seems right for this one too. But yeah, no, I've been stoked on it so far.
I'm hanging in there with it. It kind of goes back and forth like so much for me that I'm just like, like it's just like every like 3 times in each episode. It's like, you know, like they got a problem, then they get it solved, and then they get another problem right at the end of it. You're
they do stick to their formula. You know, it's like, oh, I know when to kind of not get excited, but then they build things up and they build to these moments, like fucking. I'm sorry, in the last episode when Jared loses it on Richard.
Oh, that was funny. That was hilarious.
Holy shit! We fucking died. That shit was great.
Yeah, you could say, like, I was thinking about that today actually, and I was thinking like, was this something that Mike Judge and the writers of the show had planned for a long time, or did they reach like a point in the last season where they're kind of like making it up as they go along now? And so like that, if that were the case, you know, that would be such like a surprise for the actor to read. Like he's like, oh okay, because I mean,
no, I think they have teased that out enough that like Zach Woods had that range that he could do that, and that he just like because we've seen glimpses of that before, you know.
right,
And that's his whole character. There's so many like small jokes about how hard the rest of his life has been and all this shit. Like there's a whole bit last season where he just couldn't stop getting pussy. Like he just
are you
had
talking about Jared? You mean a
Yeah.
few seasons ago, where like he's getting all the ladies coming over to his house, and then like they were just
Yeah.
like they were what Hanneman was right. He really does fuck.
Yeah, like whoa, this guy fucks. Yeah.
yeah. It's
Oh man.
that
Show's
was
it's so good. As it's coming to a close, I'm just like, God damn, that was fucking solid. I
Is
just love when
this,
the show knows when to bow out.
So is this said to be the last season?
This is the last season for sure. Yeah.
Okay, I did not know that. I did not. I was not aware.
They're done after this.
We'll see. I think they definitely. Mike Judge is freaking awesome though. He's always been with this show, especially. Just like staying current with everything. And
Have we talked about Tales from the Tour?
no,
Oh, dude, I think
maybe.
you would love that shit. It's
an
Mike
HBO
Judge's
show?
It's his show on I want to say it's like Stars or something.
Oh,
And-
I think you may have said this, and I was disappointed because that's the one that and Showtime are like the two networks that I don't have.
Yeah.
And I'm not a savvy little downloader.
Hey, that's okay.
And,
Showbox has been down for a few weeks anyway, so I don't have any of that shit either. But if you ever do get the chance, Tales from the Tour, fucking dope. That's Mike Judge animating stories of season 1 was all like country outlaw era people, so like Hank Williams and shit like that. Fucking what was the other dude? Oh man, there's so many names I cannot remember off the top of my head, but just all the crazy stories and shit that they would get into throughout their career, and they would animate it all together. And then the second season was all funk, and that was also really good too.
it was all funk.
Yeah. The first season was all country, outlaw, 70s country stars and how crazy their, touring life was. And then the second season was all George Clinton and Parliament and James Brown, all the
animates that.
Yeah, it's all animated. It's all it's a very Mike Judge style animation, and it's him doing it, and then he interviews people that were there, and they kind of cut back and forth between the animations and then the real people that were in the room.
Fuck,
as they're
that
telling
does
the
sound
story.
Pretty badass.
And then he animates the story as they're telling it, and it's really super interesting. It's hilarious. It's just really good,
Wow, I have to check that out. That
Yeah,
sounds
no,
very
I think
interesting.
you would fucking love that shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely got to find a way to hack me some stars, or if somebody's got their, I don't
Their
know,
Cody or something
their
like that.
code.
There's a bunch of those out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there,
So-
we are in the heyday of it right now because we are coming off of, I think it was Apple just released their new streaming content service 2 weeks ago, and then
Disney
today
Plus
it was
came out
Disney
today.
Plus. Yeah.
It's so bizarre to me to just have The Simpsons as part of Disney. That's strange. I don't know. I think it's
What?
bizarre. Yeah, I think it's bizarre to have The Simpsons because I just feel like it's always been something completely opposite of what Disney is. And I love The Simpsons, but I just think they're at Universal Studios, and it just doesn't seem like it's a fit. At first when Marvel joined up with Disney, it kind of was okay, that was it was easy to get used to for some reason. I don't know. I feel like that's more Disney than having The Simpsons. Going to Disneyland and seeing The Simpsons there will be it'll be a nice surprise, but it'll be a surprise nonetheless.
I didn't know that they were merging their, all of their IPs so hard. Because I know that, Fox and Disney had that big merger, which is great because now there's only 4 media companies, this whole shit is fucking dumb. But I don't know, I wouldn't have expected that. I wouldn't have thought that they would that Disney would take The Simpsons.
So you didn't know this? I thought
didn't
you were
know
surprised.
This is news to me.
Oh, okay. I thought you were surprised that I was surprised because it was
No.
yeah,
I didn't even know.
yeah. It's I guess they're going to be streaming The Simpsons on there, all of them, just kind of like how FX did. But I'm sure. I guess they're on both now. So I mean, that's cool.
That's
But
crazy, man.
that's just
I'm
another.
wondering, like, there's got to be something more to that whole business model that I don't think I fully understand yet. Because I thought, like, I feel like I read one time that I know, like, Netflix operated at a loss. And with all this content and all this stuff coming in, like, and they don't share their numbers because a lot of them are private. But I'm wondering why there's such this big push now for everybody to do their own content streaming models like this, and how so many of them are investing so much into getting it launched. Because you had Prime, Apple, and Disney now this year all going big hard at the gate to try to take away. Well, I don't know if it's trying to add to or take away market share from like Netflix and Hulu and HBO, who are like some of the big three right now.
Well, it's definitely a major competition, but it's also seemingly kind of like it seems like at the top, the people that are making the most money kind of have a hand in each of them, because they're very, I wouldn't say evenly distributed. There are certain streaming sites that I think like have, a little bit, I like their format better, and I like, the general amount of like the type of, but it seems very like each one has its own thing, and just enough for people to want to really feel that they're all worth getting. And so they go and like literally will get as many of them as possible. And that way the people that are at the very top of these things have, they're just making fucking tons of money. I don't know.
I guess to me it's like Facebook, it's like Uber, it's like Amazon. It's like so many of these companies are operating and they're not making like money, they're not making like real money. It's their evaluation that like keeps them afloat. It's like there's a value there that is beyond just money. And like that whole concept, this like economy of attention, like I really still feel like I'm struggling to understand it. Because
okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well,
and so I'm wondering,
kind of
like, is there something that I'm missing with all this stuff? Like some inherent value here. Some dudes in a back room, some Silicon Valley people fucking figured out, like, hey, this is way more valuable. It's like, this is power, That's kind of what they found out with, like, Facebook. And so they cared less about turning profits and more about, the attention and the ability to wield power. And now they're using it to destroy the world. So there's that going on.
Well,
and I'm wondering, should I be
Silicon Valley
suspicious of all these things?
Well, that's what isn't that what Russ Hanneman said in Silicon Valley, telling Richard, it's not about what you make, it's about what you're worth.
Yeah. I think
that's kind of the mindset that you're right, like that they're that's kind of like just what people are striving for, because you see how fast and rapid things change in a place like, like in the Silicon Valley. Well, I'm sure it's kind of pretty much the same thing with all of these major networks, all these streaming sites and stuff. They just, all the money that goes into it, because you got to figure, like, you got to wonder how much money, like, how are major studios staying afloat now? Like,
yeah,
like how are like Universal and like all those other major studios like staying afloat? Unless of course
how do you just go out there and lose $75 million in Gemini Man and not bat an eye at that shit? It's
right. But it was interesting though. I was watching Hail Caesar last week, and every time I watch a Coen Brothers movie, I feel like after each time it gets better and better and better, like no matter what the movie is. And like when I first saw that movie, I thought, okay, hey, it's pretty good. But each time I've seen it, and especially this last time, I'm like, holy shit, you really start to like kind of see more about the message that they're trying to get out of each story, and really like kind of like, compare what it was like back in the day. But like looking at how it was in the 50s or at least how they portrayed it. You know, it was very interesting how much power these studios had. You know, how much money they had, and you got to figure, like, you know, they've been able to do that for so long, where, like you're saying, like, how many millions of dollars did they just blow and lose on Gemini Man, and just like didn't even bat an eye?
It was
Well,
$75 million loss, you know?
Yeah. And they, you know, they've always had this, though. This is like something that's no big deal to them. Like in the movie, George Clooney's character was like held for ransom for like $100,000, like, just, and no problem. Like Josh Brolin's character was like called up somebody, some exec, and was like, hey, I need to borrow some money from the petty cash. $100,000, which at the time, you know, would have been like $1 million easily, you know, in the early 1950s.
And that's the thing, man. It's like money's not real. That's like probably the trippiest and like hardest thing that I think, you know, to get your head around. Like I struggle with that a lot, you know, when it comes to like some of these gigantic numbers. It's like, oh, you know, it's just not real. Like it's all just an agreement for, you know, evaluations. Like nothing is backed by anything. There's no inherent value to a lot of the stuff we do. It's just the value that we assign to it, and it's just this. To me, it's like the, you know, when you hear them talk about the like non-linear viewpoint of time or some shit like that. It's like, oh, okay, I feel like I can kind of understand Cliff Notes. You're taking some people's word for it, but that is just still, you know, it's a trip. And to think that like these giant companies kind of operate at this level, and it's more about like the money or like the attention in the story tends to add up to the I don't know, man. We're getting fucking...
Okay, we're getting deep, conspiracy theorist type stuff right now, but it's kind of, no, I mean, this is stuff that I watch, you know, all the time. You're not wrong to think that way, or you wouldn't, the fact that people would label you, like, anyone that, you know, raises these questions, you know, conspiracy theorist, it shows how much effort.
That's like...
No, right, but when you start you start talking about it, and when you question it, you know, and get to a point where people feel either just not, they don't know enough about it, or they just feel uncomfortable about talking about it, kind of like the same thing with how there was so much effort put into making people who raise questions about, you know, stuff is like extraterrestrial life and UFOs and stuff, how there was so much effort put into making people like that just seem crazy. But these are questions that we should all be raising, because, you know, like the fact is that when the Federal Reserve Bank was created, you know, like they don't know like where all this money is, you know, where it all went. All of this money is like missing, and they don't know where it's all gone. Or there's just all this money that's unaccounted for, and they believe that like wealthy people like took that money and took it like over to Switzerland,
to Panama.
Well, there's several different places.
But there's charters that are kept all over the place, and everything is shell companies within shell companies, and all these people that know how to like play the game, they understand that like this shit it's not real. You know?
Yeah, that movie that we were talking about.
We were talking about this a couple of weeks ago in the Laundromat, which was
was
really good, and kind of at least starting to introduce this concept. But where was I going with this? Yeah, I was saying that there's also a large there's been a giant effort to make sure that people don't understand this concept. They don't want most people to figure this out, because that, you know, if you told people like, hey, the you know, the government, right? The government, they're like, oh, you know, if I need to balance my paycheck or my pocketbook, the government should have to too. Like, we should pay for all these things. And it's like, that's not necessarily how the government works. It's not how macroeconomics works. You know, macro and microeconomics being two very different things. As far as I know, trust me, I'm no expert, so I might be speaking a little bit out of turn here, but I know that like that's actually been used as a weapon for a very long time. Because, I mean, look, I'm sure you've heard people talk about the deficit in your life, right? How big of a deal that the country's deficit is, how much money we owe And
but it ain't going down any like it ain't. There's no way it's gonna
that's
like.
the thing. The
like,
deficit
but
has
nobody
been used
cares.
as a fucking weapon since the 1800s against people. There's this conservative movement that talks about being the party of fiscal responsibility, but the truth is like that doesn't really matter. I mean, there is a number, there is a level where that does matter, but there's some, and I've been trying to understand this listening to like a podcast on economics and stuff like that, and they're saying that we still have probably like another $1 trillion, $500 billion of like bandwidth in the economy before we would really see things like the deficit bubble burst and have real adverse effects. Now, I'm very much speaking out of my element here, and this is not something that I had in my notes ready to talk about, but this shit, like, how many Republicans have you seen say shit about the deficit, which is it has exploded. It has gone up so much under this president, and nobody said a word on
it's
either
funny
side
because
of this shit because they know, hey, it doesn't matter. And then watch, if we get a Democratic president in 2020, right away the deficit's going to matter again. It's a weapon.
Yeah, well, the strange thing, and this is something that I kind of experienced today while talking with this guy now, a friend of mine from work, who, he says he didn't vote for Trump, but anyways, you could tell that he says he's a Republican though, and anyways, it seems like the view or the perspective on this is vastly different than what you just said, because whether they're wrong or not, it's just the way that they see it, because I guess Fox News says the exact opposite, that like we are the best economy that we've been in so long, and it's because of Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's I mean, I've learned
and
so
they
much
actually
about the economy
they say
here,
that, and
realizing nobody knows what the fuck that means.
well, but that's there's a way that it is said or something on whatever networks or television networks that they're watching that is telling these people and convincing them that he's actually done good for the economy.
Well,
yeah.
What happened is that like the economy, it reacts very slowly. Things take a long time to kind of trickle down, and actually the truth is that the president usually does not have that much control or bearing over the economy. It's about Congress can do some things, and there are things that can be employed to help shape it, but for the most part it's a lot of it in a lot of ways is out of control of the government. Trump is a very unique case because he has managed to take a economy that was growing and he is slowly choking it to death, and all of the you can see the economy start to grow after 2009 once there was a gigantic concerted effort to stimulate the economy and drive us out of the recession of 2008, during the Obama years. And I can't say that I agree with everything that was going on there, but, we did come out of it. And we have seen consistent growth and a snowballing effect of growth going up there. And then you can see the growth slow down as after Trump got in office, and you can actually directly connect that to things that he has done, like government shutdowns, like the tariffs and the trade war, like so much of the economic policy, like kicking every Mexican out, It's like all these things actually have very devastating effects in the economy, and I would have said, oh shit, like the president doesn't really have much of an effect on it, but like, goddamn, he managed to actually fuck it up. And so we're seeing it actually slow down right now. And it's really based on everything that I've read and heard. And I know I don't sound that smart right now, but there are a lot of alarm bells going off that we are headed for a recession, a pretty deep one. And usually the Federal Reserve is there and they have things that they can do. They have levers that they can pull to help steer us out of a recession and out of these, when we see giant economic cliffs that we're about to go over, they have things that can kind of steer us the other way. But the thing is, Trump has been so aggressively just pushing forth his own policies. Then we got things like the GOP tax cut in 2017, which was probably one of the greatest single transfers of wealth from the bottom, half of the country up to the top 1% we've ever seen. And these things are having adverse effects in the economy, and they are pulling all the levers that they would usually save until we were in a recession to help pull us out. They have basically gotten rid of all the safety nets so that politically it can still feel pretty normal, because what they're trying to do is stave off a recession until after 2020. And then, I mean, the president himself has said, or when his economic advisors came to him and said, hey, you can't keep doing this because we're going to explode the deficit like by 2028 or 2040 or some shit like that. They're like, this is going to be a major problem. And then he said literally, well, I don't care. I'm not going to be here. So there's that. The party of fiscal responsibility is full of shit. I think maybe we gave the conceit there is that, like, as I'm starting to understand more, I'm starting to understand maybe we gave Obama maybe a little bit too much credit for the economy, but I think we're definitely giving Trump too much credit for the economy, because it has been, unless you are straight up, on like a billionaire, this has not been a good economy for you. It's not a good economy for anybody. And I'm starting to realize, oh shit, it's almost like psychology. Like economics on a mass scale is kind of it's not a science really.
It's conviction.
There's a little bit of a pseudoscience there.
It's like you manipulate people by like making it seem like I don't know. I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm not explaining it well, and I know there's a lot of people out there who could explain this better, but one of the big questions is, how do you measure a good economy? Is it low unemployment? Because unemployment is really low right now, but right now it's because there's a gig economy. So people who are employed,
I think that's something enough to tell people and make them think that he's doing a good job. Just that alone, because that seems to be what, like,
those are the numbers they keep citing. But it's like, oh, cool, I've got a job with Uber and I make less than minimum wage and I don't have benefits and I have this car that I'm relying on. There's no insurance. There's no safety plan. Also, I don't have insurance, health insurance or anything like that. There's people who are working 2-3 jobs and they're not making ends meet.
That's a very good point to make. Yeah, that's definitely a very good point to make.
Rent, housing, everything is going up, and
especially
wages are staying
with all
the
these companies. Yeah, like Uber and Grubhub and Postmates and all these things that, there's plenty of more jobs, but is it really sustainable, or is it really advancing us or getting us, out of getting us ahead? And, the cost of living is still not matching up with what we're making. It's just, dude, it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's really not there. There's oh shit. Let me see if I can pull this up here that I saved the other day, because somebody put it really well. It was Qasim Rashid on Twitter. He's a lawyer, one that I follow, a very smart guy. But he said, here's one way to visualize America's ridiculous wealth inequality. Imagine getting $10,000 a day, daily. You would have $1 million in 100 days, and you'd have $1 billion. How long do you think it would take to get you $1 billion if you got $10,000 a day? Just first impression, what does that feel like? You get $1 million in 100 days.
Okay. So wait, what do you?
Don't even do the math. You get 100 days. What do you think $1 billion is?
For how many days would it take to get $1 billion? Fucking at that rate, I don't know, dude. I'm not a math guy. Don't fucking put me on the spot like that.
Yeah, but I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that, but we don't think of it this way when we think about how much wealth is actually hoarded in the upper class, that the 1% has, that the ultra rich, how much they're actually taking away. Because $1 billion, if you get $1 million in 100 days, you can get $1 billion in 274 years.
Huh.
At the same rate.
Wow.
That doesn't seem right?
No. I don't care what you do, even if you cured cancer. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, how does anybody quantify like that tremendous gap between pay for like the value of their work? Because they can't.
Nobody is worth $1 billion. Nobody has
Right.
ever made anything that was worth $1 billion, much less multiple billions of dollars.
Well,
okay?
they
You
can't, rightly so, but they do it because they've created these loopholes for themselves and gotten ahead.
Oh,
and
that's
are
what I'm
able
saying,
to-
is that none of them deserve it. They have
of course.
they have all got it off the backs of working people. You get
Right.
you know what $1 trillion is? 274,000 years at $10,000 a day. That's $1 trillion. Amazon valued at $1 trillion. So, while 43 million Americans are living in poverty right now, Amazon paid $0 in federal income tax since 2017. Since 2017, $0. And they're
Damn.
slashing benefits and fucking people. Okay, here's another, like, this is just I really want to tell stories because I feel like even me, I'm still blown away sometimes because I don't really grasp like how much fucking money they have. Like, okay, in September, Billy Foister, a 48-year-old Amazon warehouse worker, died after a heart attack at work. He was laying on the floor for 20 minutes before receiving treatment from Amazon's internal safety responders. Like, for 20
Wow.
minutes, he fucking died because he had a heart attack in an Amazon warehouse. 2 weeks
Holy
before,
shit.
2 weeks before that, he had put the wrong package in the wrong place, and they were on him in 2 minutes.
Damn.
He had a heart attack, passed out, and was laying on the floor for 20 minutes and then died. So this is the shit that we are doing right now. Like, when people, that is the heart of, I think, what a lot of like the issues that we have in this country are, is that we have been, I mean, geared, we have been engineered, we've been taught our whole lives to not think about money, value, wealth in the way that makes sense to us because of how we live. You know, me and you, we have a very specific income. You know, when we buy food, that's it. We cannot go below that income. We don't get to play
Yeah.
with imaginary money. And when you think, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. If I'm, you know, if the hospitals are all packed with illegal immigrants and there's not enough for us, like, you know, there's only just barely enough for all Americans to get by right now. Completely ignoring that we could tax like literally 6 people at a fair rate and just obliterate, you know, most of the inequalities that are in this country. That's what's fucking crazy about it, you know? There are people out there worth hundreds of billions of dollars, like Jeff Bezos. And they, I mean, it's a sickness. It is a goddamn sickness of the mind, and nobody is immune to that. Even Bill Gates this week, like, Bill Gates is usually the, once everybody's like, oh, all billionaires are bad, they're like, what about Bill Gates? He's like, you know, close to eliminating malaria in Africa and all the stuff that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have done. And that's great, but we've talked about charity here in the past. And even now, Bill Gates was saying, he had a quote this week talking about Elizabeth Warren's proposed wealth tax, saying that he, you know, he's all for some more taxes, but he said if he has to start paying, you know, $100 billion in taxes, he said he's not sure if he can support Elizabeth Warren over Donald Trump. And now Bill Gates would still have, first of all, $100 billion, not even close to the number that she was actually proposing. But even if it was $100 billion, he would still have 10, 20, $30 billion fucking left over. You couldn't spend that in 40 lifetimes, you know? I saw a number today that was like, going as fucking ham as you could, nobody could really spend more than like $8 million in their life, you know?
Yeah.
And this shit's like, I think people just don't get it. It's so crazy to me that we spend so much time fighting each other, or rather there's a side that you know would point to all these reasons that might make sense to them in their world as to, that America is this zero-sum game. It's this very finite pie. And what they see in front of them is what there is, Like if immigrants move into my neighborhood and live in this house, well, there's nobody else to live in this house. And it's this, I don't know, this great trick that's been played on everybody. When we don't even realize, it's like, hey, we have so much fucking wealth in this country. We could eliminate homelessness. We could eliminate poverty, hunger. We could easily fucking do Medicare for all and take care of sick people in this country and immigrants, illegal immigrants in this country. Like, it's crazy that such a gigantic, like the top 1% or 0.1%, whatever it was. I saw this number this week. It now officially has passed the bottom 98% in wealth. I believe it is. I'll have to look the number up again, but there was just some a milestone that was passed recently. And it's like,
I think I saw it. I think I saw what you were talking about. How they had the nine guys or something like that are wealthier than 98% of the or something like that. I definitely think I know what you're talking about, though.
Yeah, and so it's like, you couldn't spend, let's say, 10 million, let's say 20 million, like, in a lifetime. It's just like it's not something anybody can really conceive of, spending that much money. But they continue to hoard all this money and do all this stuff. Like, I think there's no job, there's no invention, there's nothing in the world that could earn somebody $1 billion. Really, if it was, it should go to fucking day laborers, people who risk their life to come to this country right in the back of a train and pick fruit, fucking they are the only ones where I might consider. I'm like, okay, maybe you can get a $1 million or a couple million for that. Like, I don't know, man. It's wild. Capitalism is a fucking trip. And every day I get a little bit closer to just being like, you know what, fuck it, seize the means production, we're going full socialist. Like, it's gross that the level of greed here. Like, okay, here's some more here. So far from, I didn't read the follow-up to that last quote here. And I apologize, I hear myself, I know I'm rambling, but I'm trying to get through it to kind of make a more coherent point. Far from $10,000 a day, the true U.S. median income is $85 a day. So while 260 million Americans live check to check and 43 million Americans live in poverty, U.S.'s top 400 billionaires pay a lower tax rate than teachers, EMTs, and first responders. This economy is rigged. And so I think that's my point, man. It's that we can do so much better, and we just need to rethink everything. This is the best time in all of history to be a billionaire, to be in the ultra wealthy elite. They are doing better than ever, and they have just, in the last 2 years, looted more than ever before. And it's time that we start a revolution, we start putting that coalition together, man, because we can't take much more of this shit.
It's going to be an interesting play out, though. I mean, it's a really interesting and scary thought to see what could happen, how would, to make some real change.
Somebody said something to me. I heard something that actually did scare me the other day. And it was that, like, to pull a lot of this stuff off, there would need to be kind of like a historic transfer of wealth. Actually, I just remembered what it was. I was listening to a show, and they had this novelist on who was talking about his novel that he had written that was about America in, like, 2050 and how climate change had affected the world, and how when we had gone to say, hey, look, fossil fuel companies and oil drilling, we can't do it. Like, the world is dying. It's going to die. And so we tried to have to just seize them and say, no, it's illegal. You can't do that anymore. And that would be the greatest transfer of wealth since the Civil War, when the entire Southern economy was based around slavery. And when we fought that, they were trying to hold on to their wealth so hard, people went to war for it and they died for it. And so in this novel, that was the future that played out. That actually a green revolution, a Green New Deal caused a civil war in this country. And the book is about the fallout from, just all the ravaging effects of climate change in 2050. And it was just such a fucking trip.
That's hardly what is it called? That's hardly fiction as much as it is current affairs. I also actually saw this funny meme where in a bookstore they had for your what does it say? Just FYI or for your information, all science fiction stories are now have been moved to current affairs. It's like, what the fuck?
Dude, yeah, the world is fucking stranger than fiction. Also, I did hear about Adam McKay was pitching a movie about a giant asteroid is coming down, hurtling towards Earth, and then just nobody gives a shit. And I was like, that sounds fucking perfect. That's the best metaphor I could think of. It's like, oh, we all see this giant asteroid coming down, like the dinosaurs about to wipe us all out, and then just nobody fucking cares or decides to even try to do anything about it.
Oh, because it's a conspiracy.
Pitch.
It's a conspiracy. It's all a conspiracy done by the leftist globalists that, the reptilians are behind. And so that's why they want you to believe that a meteor or that the world's dying and all that stuff. It's all fake news. It's all wrong.
It's
all wrong.
Literally. I saw this on Twitter this week. I don't know if you know who Dinesh D'Souza is. And if you don't, congratulations. Your life has probably been much more joyful than mine is, but he is a fucking fool. He's actually somebody who Trump, he went to prison for, I want to say, tax stuff or something. And that was Trump's first pardon in office. He just pardoned this guy. He's a just ultra conservative right-wing pundit, absolute fucking fool. And he said on Twitter, he said, remember nuclear winter? Remember when the liberals were all up in arms about nuclear winter? Well, yeah, guess that planned out. We're going to talk about climate change in 30 years the same way we talked about nuclear winter now. Fucking fools, don't fall for it. And it's like, bro, do we really have to explain to this guy that nuclear winter didn't have them because we didn't have a thermonuclear war? That was the whole point. Nuclear winter is what happens if multiple atom bombs are set off at the same time. And he's over there saying nuclear winter was a hoax. It's like, how do you deal with this level of not just stupid, but just bad faith, crazy shit flinging? It's this post Rupert Murdoch world that we're living in of Fox News and buying up all of the these avenues of production and then building this culture, cult, building this cult around not just
the cult that you don't even realize you're part of.
Yeah. It's a cult of MAGA. It's the cult of evangelical Christianity. It's this convergence of all these, these things that have been designed to fucking, for people to sign off on their own death warrants, dude. And fucking nothing I think has been more harmful to this country than Fox News in the modern era here, and now all of its offshoots that I'm going through, because this blatant this misinformation that has been, that is, we can't agree on a fucking set of facts. They're still over there denying climate change, and now we're going into impeachment for clear, obvious, simple crimes that the president and his team have admitted to multiple times, things that are spelled out in the Constitution as impeachable. And it's like, well, we'll see what happens. It's like, what the fuck? How is anybody not convinced? And like, it's news and everybody's elated that like 53% of the country or something like that believes the president should be impeached and removed from office. And it's like, there's no debate here. There's no argument coming from the other side. Even still, there's no plausible reason to not go forward with this. I mean, the evidence is over fucking whelming. And I don't know, man. I do know that the impeachment hearings, those start tomorrow. And so this is where we're going to see all this shit brought to life live. So it's not just me who watches this shit obsessively and follows all these things. They're bringing it like they're stopping all the programming tomorrow. Fucking NBC, ABC, PBS, they're all carrying it all day. And it's going to be a thing. And so I am a little bit cynical. I don't know how much of an effect it's going to have. But shit, maybe. I might be underestimating the, news savviness of the American people, because I also thought that, impeachment, launching an impeachment inquiry was not going to budge the people who were all for him, but it has actually done so a little bit, like a lot more than I was thinking. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we'll
where do you
surprised.
get that information? Like, how do you know that?
There are polls that were done
about, like, now that he's going to be impeached, or like he's going to go through these hearings, that he's lost supporters?
Yeah, he actually has. There's
Okay.
a lot of polls are consistently showing that he's actually, lost support. People are having a lot of trouble with this. People are saying, oh, yeah, this is not good. This is bad, because they're looking at, people who, a lot of it is people who don't follow the news and people who go by their old wisdom. Like, there's a lot of people who support Trump or voted for Trump who just don't follow the news. And they have their circle of friends who kind of tell them what's going on. They don't really keep up with it. They hear things and they go, okay. And I have a hard time faulting those people who are so in a bubble that they literally don't get it.
I think that's so many people, though.
Yeah.
Like, when I hear, like, a couple weeks ago, I heard some family members saying stuff, and it's just clearly not from any place of real understanding or knowledge. It's simply due to, it just kind of is. It's like, the Catholic person that goes to church every Sunday but doesn't pay attention or know what's going on. They're just doing it because it's part of their their ritual that they do every Sunday. It's like the same thing, that they do. We're like, they're conservatives because everything
their parents
about
were, and they feel they feel like they identify more culturally with that movement, and they don't, look. I can't.
And they
can't fault
believe
somebody
that,
for that
they believe that that's they believe that that's that being a Republican is going to make them pay less taxes because of less bureaucracy, is what they believe. And
even though, unless you're a billionaire, your taxes went up this year because of Trump.
right,
But people don't
these
know
are
that,
things, because they get the basic lies from a station that they watch and only halfway watch and pay attention to. So to them, everything's okay. It's kind of like we were talking about, how if you were to watch Fox News or something like that, like, they'll say the complete opposite of what, information we're getting from, like, any credible source. And so, or even just the way that they spin a set of facts to make
tons
people
of studies have been
believe.
done that you are actually less informed than somebody who does not watch the news at all if you watch Fox News. Those studies were done, like, way before the era of Trump. That's always been a fucking factor. And it's
Right,
like,
but when you have all of those people in this cult convinced from the get-go that any facts or studies that you pull up is fake news, then, like, you really can't do anything about it. That's the point that we're at. That's the point. You got to hope that, like, there's other ways that these people will be convinced, because it's really insane to me how people can just easily write it off and not even realize that it's because that's simply the decision that they would that they want. That's the reality that they would prefer because it's easier for them. It's easier for them to not care about changing or making changes that might, disrupt their way of normalcy or the way that they've been so used to doing things, to making them feel responsibility.
The problem is that everybody gets so cynical about politics in general, and the problem is this whole idea of both sides do it. People. How many people do you know? Because I know a fuckload of them who go, "Oh yeah, the conservatives have Fox and the liberals have MSNBC, and CNN." Sometimes I'm just like, "What the fuck are you guys talking about? That is nowhere near the same thing." It feels right, to think that our politics is an equal but opposite thing. And
I don't think that everybody thinks that it's equal. I think that what they're saying by saying is that if they do, then there's
people do. I mean, people in the mainstream media do.
But
I mean, that is.
I could definitely see, though, to a certain extent, the idea that of course, like conservative and Trump supporting Republicans are definitely. It's ridiculous. They're way worse for sure, and that there are good people reporting, and there are stories in places where you can find good news, but there are places that are run by bigger corporations that do report, like what they're saying, like CNN or those things. Not to say that it's on equal planes, but they still do some, like, they're still fucking fucked up. You understand?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many fundamental misunderstandings.
But I think it's important to call that out.
Oh, absolutely. I think we should never stop calling out where the differences really are.
Right. To help, if we're going for accountability, let's attack it on all ends. Even though I'm not saying that one is, that they're both the same, because it's clearly not.
Because the scariest thing for me when I was talking about the polling that I was reading before was that something like 60% of undecided voters, I think it was in battleground states, where they were asked, do you think that what's going on, what the president's being impeached for, is normal behavior? And 60% of them said, yeah, this is politics as usual in Washington. And it's like, oh, fuck, that is where the Trump team, they were smart, that they're slinging so much shit, and they are playing into the cynicism of not just the public but the media as well, who are happy to both sides everything. And what that's done is that's resulted in this shit where nothing like this. I mean, maybe Nixon you could kind of make an argument for, but what he's being impeached for is fucking Titanic. This is the biggest scandal in presidential history. There is no comparison, but nobody believes me. They think, I mean, I'm ranting and raving about this shit so much. Nobody fucking. Go ahead.
I think what it is it is a psychological thing, and I think that it's because the companies, the media companies that do promote the both, what you're saying has been poisonous, are doing that intentionally, along with perhaps or unintentionally, perhaps just fictional television shows that we consume ourselves with, and kind of become what's the word that I'm looking for? I'm super high again.
Everything gets desensitized
toward this reality, to kind of think that just to kind of not be shocked by anything, or to not really understand the severity of things, because you're right, you just it sounds like something you've heard before, even if it was in a television show about politics or something. I feel like a lot of that, whether we believe it or not, actually does have an effect largely on society. Now, not in any way saying that we should go and censor fictional television shows or tell people not to be writing juicy stuff, but it's just it kind of is sad that it has happened that way.
Yeah, and it's rough, especially when they are so good at accusing the other side of what they're doing, and so then we say, what? No, that's you guys. You guys are the one doing that, and then it looks like a childish fight, You know, it looks like two kids arguing, and then everybody throws their hands up and goes, fucking politics, and they don't think about it any deeper than that. And that's the thing we got to fight, you know? And so we're at an hour right now. And just in closing then, I wanted to end on a lighter note. First of all, our good friend Roger Stone is fucked. He started his case basically open and shut this week. They just came out. Yeah, they came out. The prosecutor just laid a fucking mountain of incredibly damning evidence against Roger Stone down. Basically, everybody threw their dick on the table. And then, in very unlike Roger Stone, he rested and called no witnesses. And closing arguments actually start tomorrow at 1 p.m. So that was really crazy. Not to mention that during this shit, they very clearly implicated Trump in the whole collusion thing that he was saying he was exonerated from by Robert Mueller. They very clearly were working with WikiLeaks, and all these new documents are coming out. And basically what he's being impeached for right now is the same crime. The Ukraine stuff is all coming down from Putin, and it's all converging into one story. And so we will see, starting this week, how well the Democrats can actually sell this story to the people, and hopefully this shit starts to take hold. I don't know. I'm holding my finger. I'm twisting my fingers, hoping this shit. Anyways, I'm hoping we get some good news and we have some more interesting shit to talk about next week. And also, on a fun note here, Trump, as you know, was booed at the World Series. The Washington Nationals, who booed him, went on to win the championship. He was booed at the UFC. And then finally, he went to the University of Alabama game, where people were threatened with permanently losing their season tickets if they protested. He finally got cheers, but then Alabama lost their first game at home for the first time in 31 games, which is since 2015. So everything, I saw this hashtag the other day that I thought was great. It was hashtag ETTD, and I don't know how, but I just knew that it stood for everything Trump touches dies. And so my favorite little piece of this is that Trump last night was tweeting for everybody to go vote for Sean Spicer, his former Secretary of Communication, to vote for him on Dancing with the Stars. And then he lost, and then Trump deleted the tweet. I'm like, fuck, you are so incredibly small that you thought, oh, you couldn't dare be associated with somebody who lost Dancing with the Stars. Don't you have better shit to do? I don't know, man. Anyways, those were the silly things I wanted to end on. Oh, and Rudy Giuliani wants to start a podcast about the impeachment. And so I could not be more excited for my new favorite podcast from Rudy Giuliani, because this is great. We're going to have him on the show next week to help promote it. Okay? So everybody, make sure that you subscribe to our show. That is at Let It Bleed Cast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Catch us on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, however you get your podcasts. And make sure, because, man, Giuliani's going to be in studio next week. We're going to be promoting his show. It's going to be great. And, of course, if you guys want to find me, you guys can find me at Nobody Cares Phil on Instagram and at Phil Nobody Cares on Twitter.
So,
and for you,
well, yeah. Do not forget that this Sunday is Art in the Park's 2-year anniversary.
Woo!
Come to Peak Park in Buena Park dressed as either your favorite Hogwarts character or your favorite Hobbit, dwarf, elf, wizard, you name it, because there's so many more characters and dope things about Lord of the Rings than there is in Harry Potter. But you got to pick your side, come out and join us. It's going to be a fucking awesome time. And I think that's all I have for this weekend. It's been...
That's enough. Clear your schedules, people. Let's fucking go. The 2-year anniversary. We're going all out for this shit.
Hell yeah, dude. It's going to be fun. I can't believe we've been doing this for 2 years, talking about this. It's just awesome to see where the maintenance of all of these different endeavors and these artistic things that we've built, and seeing them grow and blossom into stuff that is just like... and I don't know. It is
truly
really,
impressive, my friend. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very gratifying. So, anyways, would love to see you guys all come out and follow the Psychedelic Lions Den on Instagram. That's psychedelic_lions_den. As always, Hoodrat Stuff is my personal spot where you can find me doing my thing. That's Hoodrat Stuff with 3 Fs. So, yeah, thank you for tuning in this week, listening, and hopefully we can see some more interesting stuff in the news and get more shows in there so we can come back for our usual thing next week. We'll see you all next week.
Yeah, let's just fade out.
Yeah. Later.